Choosing a nursing home can cause a lot of anxiety and feelings of guilt for families. The decision to place a family member under the care of a nursing home facility is usually made when health and/or mental capabilities have declined and the family is no longer sufficiently able to care for their loved one. All facilities must ensure and protect the rights of every resident and provide a clean and healthy and attractive environment. Residents are entitled to treatment regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, ability to pay, or source of payment. You may not be aware that you can review the state surveys of each nursing home that you have an interest in because Medicare and Medicaid facilities are required by law to let you see their survey reports. Every resident has the right to receive medical care, nursing care, rehabilitative and restorative therapies, and personal hygiene in a safe, clean environment. It is imperative to do your homework when choosing a nursing home facility to avoid any instances of foreseeable abuse, neglect, and death that continue to be reported within nursing home facilities nationwide every day. Every resident has the right to be treated with consideration, respect, and dignity in full recognition of his or her individuality. This includes privacy during medical treatment and care of personal needs. People not involved in the care of residents should not be present during examinations and treatment without consent from the resident. Every resident should be encouraged and assisted to exercise his or her right to voice grievances and recommend changes in policies and services to facility staff and/or outside representatives of his or her choice without fear of coercion, discrimination, or reprisal. But as this next Insider Exclusive tragic story clearly demonstrates, reports of serious physical, sexual, and verbal abuse are too numerous among the nation's nursing homes. A congressional report has found that over 30% of the over 5,000 nursing homes in the U.S. were cited for an abuse violation that had to cause harm between January 1999 and January 2001. Over 2,500 of the violations were serious enough to cause actual harm or to place residents in immediate jeopardy of death or serious injury. Common problems included untreated bed sores, inadequate medical care, malnutrition, dehydration, preventable accidents, and inadequate sanitation and hygiene. In fact, in 1,600 of these cases, the abuse violations were serious enough to cause actual harm to residents or to place the residents in immediate jeopardy of death or serious injury. Today, the Insider Exclusive Investigative News team goes behind the headlines on location in Minnesota with Mark Kosieradzki and Joel Smith at Kosieradzki Smith Law Firm in nursing home abuse to report on how they successfully represented an 89-year-old resident who was raped by Andrew Merzwksi, a caregiver at the Edgewood Vista facility in Hermantown, Minnesota. Then to add insult to injury, court documents allege that even after Merzwksi admitted to having sex with the elderly woman, an administrator at the home told a sexual assault nurse the outrageous story that the 89-year-old victim had flirted with Merzwksi and made up the story of the assault. The elderly survivor received no immediate treatment or counseling after she reported the rape to Hermantown police and faculty staff. Instead, she was kept against her wishes in the mental health unit of St. Luke's Hospital in Duluth for nearly 72 hours. The nursing home, Edgewood Vista, is owned by Edgewood Management Group of Grand Forks, North Dakota, which owns or operates nearly 50 senior living facilities in 7 Midwestern states. The company referred calls to a spokesman who could not be reached by our news team. Advocates for sexual assault survivors say the incident, which occurred in January 2013, highlights the challenges that vulnerable adults face in reporting rape or other incidents of abuse. Often their stories are not believed because the events seem too painful to contemplate and because they are suffering from dementia or other forms of mental illness. Merzwksi pleaded guilty and was sentenced to only 53 months in prison and ordered him to register as a predatory sex offender for 10 years. In this Insider Exclusive Investigative TV expose, we visit with not only the lawyers Mark Kosieradzki and Joel Smith, but also Dr. Cheryl Canal, a medical doctor and the daughter of the victim. Mark and Joel have earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as some of the best trial lawyers in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, and across the nation. They make it their dedicated mission to get legitimate and truthful answers to what really happened to their clients in each case. They believe that elders within our community deserve the utmost respect and that any individual who brings harm to an elderly person should be held accountable. They use the civil court systems to ensure the rights of the elderly are protected and their abusers are held accountable for their wrongdoing. They see it their mission to fight for the people who have been harmed by the willful or negligent actions of others. Mark and Joel have built a substantial reputation nationwide by consistently winning cases other law firms have turned down, and their amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide their clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's my great pleasure to introduce Mark and Joel to the show. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Good. Tell our audience a little bit about your law firm. What kind of law do you practice and why you practice that law?
Well, we represent individuals. A very, very large part of our practice is representing abuse victims, victims of nursing home, group home, assisted living abuse, and tragically a big part of that is sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. At this stage of my life, I don't want to represent corporations. I want to represent people who need help, who've been harmed, because if we help them, we can hold wrongdoers accountable, and that's going to change the way the world runs.
Right. And Joel, your practice is almost, I guess exclusively almost, related to protecting elders, right?
It is. It's a prominent part of our practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's an important part of our practice. It's an honor to represent these people, and it's really a privilege to go after those who are responsible for harming them.
I often ask lawyers, if they have a certain proclivity to representing certain kinds of people. You've written a lot about protecting the elderly. Was there something in your life that happened where you were destined to do this sort of thing?
Yeah, there was. My grandmother was raped when she was senile, suffering from Alzheimer's, and depended on her caregivers to take care of her, and they didn't.
Were you a lawyer at the time?
No, I was probably high school, early college.
Yeah. And what happened to that person, by the way?
Nothing, because nobody could figure out how to do anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Today we are here on a similar case, but the outcome was different. Tell our audience a little bit about, Mark, the facts of this case.
We had the privilege of representing an 88-year-old woman who was in an assisted living facility. Her care was entrusted to that facility. The 28-year-old medication aide drugged her and raped her, and that's wrong. Mm-hmm. And so we were asked to hold the wrongdoers accountable in an effort to make a difference.
Now, Joel, I understand that this aide went to the administrators and confessed, correct?
Ultimately, the administrators found out about his confession. Yeah. He first confessed to the police. The police informed his bosses. The bosses then had a meeting with him, and he admitted and confessed to it again to them, but shortly after the occurrence.
Mm-hmm. But the police didn't arrest him right away, did they?
The police did not arrest him immediately.
Yeah.
That followed shortly thereafter. What didn't happen is the bosses didn't contact the hospital to let them know what they had just learned, and the hospital was trying to figure out what to do with this lady who claimed that she had been raped.
Yeah, and what they were looking at is a self-serving interest, protecting their hospital, protecting their image, because what did they do?
Absolutely. First of all, they deny. Then they blame the victim, saying she's making it up. She makes stuff up. And then they say it's not as big of a deal, that maybe it really wasn't as bad as she claims, or it's her fault.
Right.
She brought it on. None of which was true. All of which was a deflection from their own responsibility.
Yeah.
Well, it went further than that, because then they tried to place her in a psychiatric institution so nobody would believe her.
Yeah.
And then they would walk.
They tried to hide her away, basically.
And that was after the hospital told them she doesn't belong in a psych unit.
Yeah. Now, what were your strategies when you first heard about this case? What did you do immediately?
Well, the first thing we had to do is find out what happened, and was she raped. We learned very quickly that we did. Then we had to figure out who was responsible, and why wasn't this coming to the surface? Why was it that the police weren't acting? Why wasn't the family told? And so what we did is we started this lawsuit to try to find out, because once again, the government does not always do an investigation the same way we would do it. They come in, they said, oh, this guy raped her, boom. You know, let's find him. But why is it? Why is it that they weren't getting information? And what was going on with this cover-up? And why wasn't the family finding out?
Right.
So we started the lawsuit, and we started taking testimony of everybody who was there and tracking it minute by minute, and gathering phone records and gathering government records. And then we found the rape investigators. And that's when the truth surfaced.
And what was the truth?
The truth was she was raped.
Yeah.
Drugged and raped by the person that was supposed to be taking care of her.
She was 88 or 89.
88 years old.
And he was 28.
28 years old.
Sick
Absolutely.
individual.
Absolutely.
Okay. And the truth also was that, as you said, Mark, the home hid the evidence, covered it up. And the reason that they covered it up is because they don't want it to get out in the public eye. But that kind of backfired, didn't it?
Well, what happened is the director of nursing has a choice. She gets a call one morning. She's told one of her employees is accused of raping someone, and now she's got a choice. She has a choice. Do I investigate this? Do I try to find what's going on and do everything in the best interest of my patient? Or do now I make the choice to put a blanket on it, to cover it up, throw the patient under the bus, and try to protect my company and my job? And she took the latter.
I'm just kind of curious why she thought she would be protecting her job. Was the company at fault for not doing their due diligence when they hired this guy?
Well, the question is, who is she serving?
Yeah.
Although she is the top clinical person at this particular facility, this particular facility answers to a corporate enterprise that controls the shots.
So they were looking at their overall big picture, right?
What was in the best interest of the company, not in the best interest of her patient.
Right. What happened as a result of this case? What was the end result?
Well, the end result was we gathered information, we shared it with the county attorney, we litigated the case heavily. The court found the rapist accountable, allowed us to pursue a claim against punitive damages. The case was settled to the satisfaction of all of the parties. Mr. Merzwksi went to prison, and there's a $10 million judgment against him.
Okay, and what about the nursing home? Were they held accountable at all?
The case was resolved to the satisfaction of all of the parties.
Okay. As a result of this case, has the law changed? Are people in administrators in nursing homes doing things differently now?
This is a wake-up call. If they didn't get it before, the litigation and the public exposure in the media of this case resulted in an outrage.
Right.
And it resulted in the Board of Nursing getting involved, the Department of Health being questioned why they didn't do more. All of the people who are players in this have to know that there are people out there like this family and this law firm who are going to go after them for not doing the right job.
Right.
And the judicial system might help us to accomplish that. So it is a big wake-up call.
Good. Today we have with us the daughter of your client, Dr. Cheryl Clino. Let's bring her on right now. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Cheryl Clino. Welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here. I know this is still a, it's still a wound in your heart, in your mind, and everything, because this happened to your mom. When you first heard about it, what was your initial reaction?
I was shocked.
And probably furious.
I was furious, but the initial reaction when she called me was shock and dismay.
Yeah.
I was emotionally overcome and was there to take action immediately, which was to call my aunt and then call my brother and call the police.
Right.
And then I was on the road up to Duluth.
You eventually found out that the home she was in was covering up the crime.
Yes.
What was your feeling about that?
Furious, angry.
Yeah. They were saying your mom was lying and she invited this and all this other baloney, right?
I was livid.
Yeah.
I was so livid and angry. I felt like I was very angry. I won't even say what I was thinking.
Yeah. There's a lot of Americans today that are sitting in your position that are looking at placing their moms, their dads, their loved ones in homes. What advice do you have to give them when searching for a home to take care of them?
I would advise that you thoroughly check out each individual's resume. I would sit
of
down.
Employees.
I would.
Yeah.
And I would also sit down and talk to the director of nursing personally.
Mm-hmm.
I would investigate how they do their checks, how they do their monitoring, if they're allowed to come into the rooms without knocking, if they have keys to unlock the door.
Will they allow you to do this? I mean, to investigate this? Or some homes will just say, I'm sorry, we're not going to give you all that information?
Well, I would demand to know the backgrounds of the individuals that they've hired.
Yeah. You know, Mark, what impressed me a lot about this case was how quickly your law firm filed suit. There was a reason for that, right?
It is. Minnesota...
2 months.
Well, when Cheryl contacted us, we saw that this was a very important case from the outset. But Minnesota has an aberration in the law.
Yeah.
In most states, if you rape someone and that person dies, you're still going to be held accountable. In Minnesota, if the patient dies, the wrongdoer walks. So we had to get that case in suit.
How did that ever get passed? It's just unbelievable.
It's been a law around forever.
Yeah.
This year, the Minnesota legislature actually had it presented to them. Both the House and the Senate passed a bill to change the law and make it consistent with every other state in America. But for whatever reason, when it went to conference committee on the day of the vote, it was pulled.
Well, that's one of the reasons we're doing this show, is because that law shouldn't be in effect. It
wrong.
should be changed.
Wrongdoers should be held accountable. There was a case in Minnesota a couple of years ago where 5 girls raped 14 people for 6 months, and they dragged out that lawsuit until everyone died, and then the courts dismissed it, and no one was held accountable.
It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous.
Minnesota needs to change that.
Yeah. As a result of this whole horrible experience, what's your opinion of the justice system?
Not very good at this point because of particularly the investigation that was done by the Minnesota...
the Department of Health.
The Department of Health, correct. Mm-hmm. It was very poor, very poor.
There are unfortunately other people in America that this same situation may happen to. When they go to find a lawyer to represent them, Mark and his law firm represents people all over America, correct? What would you say to them about Mark and Joel's law firm representing them?
Absolutely outstanding. Second to none.
And why is that?
They uncovered things that were unbelievable that I didn't know about. Unbelievable. They were fabulous. Absolutely fabulous.
Well, I want to thank you very much for taking your time to come over and be on the set today, because your input is invaluable. And I wish you the greatest luck in the world and success. You're still practicing medicine, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
And you are a medical doctor, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Elder abuse is a big problem in America today. I mean, it's difficult to find out when you're placing your loved ones in a nursing home, if they have any lawsuits against them, who has hired these CNAs, certified nursing, or assistants or medical administrators. You worry that they could be molested. You worry they don't get the kind of care that you're paying a lot of good money for, because these homes cost a lot of money. How does one determine which home they should place their loved ones in, and what criteria should they look on? Is there public sites they can get this information at?
There are, and our website offers a number of those resources that consumers can look to help protect themselves. But you can't rely just on the government.
Right.
The government reviews these and conducts inspections of them, of these facilities. That's not where you stop, but you need to include that. There are ombudsmen, people who are supposed to be advocates for the residents of these facilities. Contact the ombudsman. Is this a facility that is problematic? Are they having problems? Talk to the people there. There's no substitute. This is as much buyer beware as there is in our culture, because there is such a prevalent problem, and the people who are responsible for it are good at covering it up.
Yeah, so you have to do your homework, basically.
Well, it's a place to start.
Yeah.
The problem is a consumer doesn't really have access to the information. We handle these cases all over America. And the families try hard to find the facilities, but the problem with our system is the consumer doesn't have access to the information, and the government doesn't really help a whole lot. And what Joel and I do is, if we take a case, we throw everything we've got at it, and we find out the truth.
Okay.
And that's when we hold them accountable.
And that relates to my very last question. Because of this case, which was widely in the newspaper, it was broadcast all over, you must get a lot of calls from people, elder abuse cases. How do you decide which cases to take?
I wish we could handle every case of somebody who has a legitimate problem where they've been let down.
Yeah.
We just can't take every case. We look for the cases that can make a difference, the cases where we can come up to the front door and hit it with a ramrod to get their attention, to affect change. And those are the cases we try to take on, because like Mark said, we put everything into it.
Yes.
And we hope for big results to affect the kind of change that needs to happen.
Well, thank God, America has guardians like you guys to go out there and fight for these people, because they have no voice without you. And I want to thank you very much for being on our show.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at InsiderExclusive.com.